Okay, after your book came out, did I know you mentioned that you had spoken to Miss Wallace. Did you ever hear anything from the Tupac side, whether it be his mom or anybody related to him?
I never spoke directly with Afeni. I made an effort to try to contact her. I think I went to an office building out here in like Encino, and I think I met with a girl. I believe her name was Molly, and Molly had put me on the phone with Gloria, which is I believe Afeni's sister. And basically, I said, hey, here's the deal. I'm coming out with a book, and I think we have pretty much determined who was involved in Tupac's murder. And she says, well, appreciate your efforts. Thank you for that. And but really, it's not new news to us. We're not surprised by the fact that you have determined that Orlando Anderson is the murderer, because that's who we've always believed to be the murderer. So yeah, good job on what you've done, but no big surprise for us. Essentially, was the conversation.
Okay. Um, a lot of people that like to discredit the work that you did, they always bring up an incident where they said a gun was pulled on a baby, and that shows that you were a crooked cop or something along those lines. Something kind of a crazy story. Can you tell your side of what they're talking about?
Yeah. So when I was working a task force, and oftentimes the either the probation department or the parole department would come, and they would want to go and do parole checks or probation checks on we call them sweeps. So they would do probation sweeps or parole sweeps, and they need a lot of manpower to do that because you're going to multiple locations. And so your parole agent comes down and he says, here's a list of all the parolees that I want to go follow up on, make sure that they're in compliance with their parole conditions. Or here's all the probationers I need to follow up on. We'll make sure they're in compliance with their conditions of probation. And so we would all have to go and, participate in these massive operations. So this one particular time, a guy was on parole. His name was, street name was Nene. I can't remember his real name. And he was on parole, and his parole officer wanted to make sure that he was living where he said he was living and that type of thing. So we go over to this apartment behind his family's house, which is on, I think, 42nd Street. And then the back house has like 4 units. It's like a fourplex. And so we go back to the unit that we believe that Nene's in, and his parole officer knocks on the door. A female answers the door, but she's very cagey. She's like barely opening the door. And what do you want? Says, I'm Nene's parole officer. I want to come in. I need to speak with him. And she says, well, he's not here. Well, we can see through the crack, or the parole agent can see through the crack, that there's a male black sitting on the couch who's just wearing like boxer shorts and a t-shirt. So he's thinking, okay, that's probably Nene, and you don't have search and seizure protection when you're on parole. So the parole agent says, we're coming in. She's like, no, you're not. So, yes, we are. We go in, basically pushes the door open. She's out of the way, and we tell her to sit on the couch with this other guy. And it's a small little like one-bedroom house, a small little one-bedroom apartment. And we have to clear it. We got to make sure that nobody's hiding behind doors or coming out of closets with guns, or finding out if anything's there. So of course I have my gun out, because when you're going, when you're searching a house, you have your gun out. And I go through the living room and down a hallway and then into a bedroom. As I go into the bedroom, of course, I'm like any good cop who's trying to protect himself, you go through and you kind of like scan it, and if you don't see any threats, then you move on. So I go in and I scan it, and there's a closet, so I walk over to the closet, I open the closet and clear it, and look under the bed, clear it, room's clear. Well, there's a baby that's sleeping on this bed. It's an infant that's asleep on this bed. Well, I pay him no attention whatsoever, obviously, because he's no threat to me. So I go in, baby on the floor, shut closet, look under the bed, and I come back out. Well, turns out that this kid that was in this house with this girl, which is Nene's wife, shouldn't have been there, if you know what I mean. So she's very defensive about this whole thing because she kind of just got caught in an apartment. Meanwhile, the parole agent had fucked up because he didn't do his due diligence. Nene had already been arrested and was in county jail. So now we're doing a parole search on a location where the parolee can't be because he's actually in custody at the time. And so it was an administrative mistake by the parole agent. We're along for the ride. We're just helping him search and make sure that the conditions are met for parole. So we go in there and they file a lawsuit against everybody involved, saying that it was an unlawful search and seizure. And of course, she throws this extra on it, like, this officer went into the bedroom and pointed a gun at my baby. He pointed a gun at my baby for a minute, just stood over him. Like, of course, yeah, that's what I do. I go in and I terrorize babies. The kid was sound asleep. I was in the room no longer than 15 seconds tops, maybe 10, and back out in the living room. Well, during this lawsuit and everything, we go to court, we go to trial, and they prove, because we know where she was sitting by her own statements, where she's sitting and where everybody else is, interviewed and gives their statements. And we simply do a diagram of the house, and we illustrate that there's no way in the world that you can be sitting on that couch and see into the bedroom, because you can't even see the doorway. So her claiming that I was in there pointing a gun couldn't be, is absolutely just fabricated, because there's no way for her to have even been able to see in the room. So it's just a girl who's trying to, exaggerate in order to defend the fact that she got caught with her pants down, so to speak. So that's it. So the lawsuit was, she actually ran out of court, and she was so embarrassed when this was all being divulged during the trial. She just got up from the table and ran out of the court and was never seen again. The case got dismissed. And then her attorney, whose name was Yagman, he got arrested like the day or the day after for defrauding the government. So, it was just this comedy of errors, basically, with some really shady people that were trying to get money out of the LAPD and anybody else they could. So it was, looking in hindsight, the whole thing was just kind of a funny event. And I had had history with that place before, because this particular apartment, we had rescued a girl that had been kidnapped from Seattle by some gang member friends of Nene's. And so we had we had history at this place. We knew that it was a place that constantly law enforcement was going. In this particular unit, previously we had rescued a kidnap victim out of. So when we get there, of course, we're on high alert, because we don't know what we're gonna, we don't know what's behind closed doors. But the whole case was thrown out.